Good morning. I think we're about a third of the way through trigonometry. So we've already looked at using trigonometry in right angled triangles to find missing angles. And so today we're going to start looking at missing sides. And there are two sorts of problem that we need to deal with. So we're going to look at the first sort now. And I've attached a sheet. I'm going to go through one question from that sheet in this section and then get you to try three others. And then we'll come to section 2 in the same video. Trigonometry is one of those things that seems to have this mystique. People go, oh, trigonometry, that's really hard. I'm hoping that if you follow these simple steps and that you don't try and take shortcuts, that you'll find it's pretty straightforward and you can feel like a trigonometry superhero. So let's go for it. So here's my right angle triangle. I'm going to start as I did with the missing angles by labelling my sides in this order. Hypotenuse, opposite the right angle triangle. Adjacent, the other side that makes up the angle, which in this case is down here. If this was the angle I knew, then that would have been the adjacent. And then opposite is the other side. Now, slightly different question at this point. With missing angles, I said, what are the two sides that we know? Now I'm going to ask, what are the two sides involved in this question? I know the hypotenuse, and I'm trying to find the adjacent. So this is a problem that relates to H and A. I don't know both of them. One of them is the thing I'm trying to find out. Opposite, not involved in this question at all. You'll note from the sheet they use question marks. I've replaced it with algebra because that's just the way I like it. So anyway, A and H, this is a cos problem, isn't it? So I'm going to write down the cos rule. The angle is 39 degrees, so I'm going to start by writing, right, the cos of 39 is equal to A over H. Write that every time, whatever the angle is. Then I'm going to plug in the numbers and letters from my specific problem. So cos 39 equals, well, the adjacent side is the side I'm trying to find, and the hypotenuse is 8 centimetres. And I want to know what x is. At the moment, x is being divided by 8. I need to kill that fraction, so I'm going to multiply by 8 to get x on its own, and if I multiply one side by 8, I've got to multiply the other side by 8. At that point, I reach for my calculator and I type in 8 times cos, not shift cos this time, we're using the normal cos function because we know the angle. So cos of 39, put that in a bracket, because it opens a bracket when you type cos, and that's my answer. Sorry, I know that's not very clear, but if we're rounding to one decimal place, that means that x is equal to 6.2, and it's centimetres in this case. So the process is straightforward. Label your sides, identify the two sides involved in the problem, and therefore choose which of the three rules. And then it's 4 steps. Bish, bash, bosh, something else. And if you follow that process, I promise you you'll have absolutely no problem at all. So can you at this point pause the video and have a go at B, D, and I. You'll notice I've also attached work solutions, so once you've had a go at B, D, and I, look at my work solutions and just check that you've done those correctly. Okay, so here's the second sort of finding a side problem. So we're still finding a missing side. I guess the first question will be, how are these questions different? Well, let's start the process. Let's label the sides in the right order. So the hypotenuse is always the side opposite the right angle triangle. The adjacent is the other side that makes up the angle. So this is the angle we're dealing with. So hypotenuse, that's adjacent, that's opposite. Next question is, which two sides are involved in this problem? Well, I know the adjacent, and I'm trying to find the hypotenuse. Again, I've replaced the question mark on the sheet with an x. So this is an A and an H problem. It's cos again. So I write down the rule. So I've got cos of 57 is equal to A over H. That's the rule. I then fill in the values from the problem. So I've got cos of 57 is equal to A is 6 and H is the missing side I'm trying to find. So can you see how this problem differs from the previous one? Let's just look back to the previous one. In this one, the missing value was on top of the sum. It was the numerator in that fraction on the right-hand side. Now, the missing value is the denominator. It's at the bottom. And it just means that you've got a couple of steps of rearranging to do. So firstly, I hate fractions, as you know, so I'm going to multiply both sides by x. That kills the fraction on the right-hand side, sorry, and it means on the left-hand side I've got x times cos 57. I want to get x on its own. At the moment it's being multiplied by cos 57. What's the opposite of multiplying by cos 57? I need to divide both sides by cos 57. So that means on this side I've got just x, and on the right hand side I've now got 6 divided by cos 57. So this time, and of course then I need to work out the answer. So there we go, let's go and reach for the calculator. So I'm going to do 6 divided by cos of 57. Could do it like that. Gives me my answer. Or I could do it with the fraction button. So 6 on the top and cos of 57 on the bottom. Whichever way you do it, you'll get the same correct answer. 11.0 if we're rounding to one decimal place, and we're looking at C, so that's still in centimetres. So with this one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps of rounding. And that's the full method. However, some of you will spot that going from this step to this step, which we did in 2 jumps, actually all that's happened is the x and cos 57 have swapped places. And that's correct. We multiplied by x, we divided by cos 57, it just swapped places. It was the switcheroo. So you could choose, and I'm always a bit anxious about taking shortcuts, but for some of you I think you'll be able to do this in one go. So you could choose to set your working out like this. It's a cos problem, so cos 57 equals A over H. That step doesn't change. Fill in the numbers. Cos 57 equals 6 over x. That step doesn't change. But at that point you might say, oh, hang on a minute, this is one of those ones where the missing value is in the denominator. So all I need to do is the switcheroo. I'm just going to switch those two around. So my next line will say so you could, if you wanted, rather than doing 5 steps of working where you do the full method, you could combine that into one jump and just do the switcheroo. That's perfectly acceptable. The key thing though is that you understand the difference between this sort of problem where the missing value is in the denominator and the original sort of problem, which is much easier, isn't it, because the missing value is on top. And understanding that difference, I think, is the only really tricky bit when it comes to finding sides. How do I know which sort of problem it is? Well, I don't know until I get to this step here. So I don't know until I've labelled my sides, I've identified which of the 3 rules I'm using, and I've filled in the values. It's at that point I know, right, it's the first sort or it's one of these sorts. So on the sheet there are those 3 I'd like you to try, E, F and G, which are all of this type. And again, I've attached worked solutions. So once you've had a go at those, have a look at my solutions. And that's it. I know there are more questions on the sheet in that exercise, but I don't need you to do any more. It is one of those exercises where they put the correct answers at the bottom, so hopefully that gives you a bit of confidence as well. But I only want you to do the 3 previous ones, B, D and I, and E, F and G. No need to submit anything this week, but if you want help, then by all means get in touch. Take care.